Recently, I've been on my For You page, my YouTube For You page, and I've seen a lot of content from young people around my age group. So from, let's say, 16 to 25-ish. And a lot of the content that I've seen from them is this kind of lamenting or not necessarily complaining, but discussing in quite honest terms about their mental health, right? Their feelings of alienation and of loneliness and separation and detachment from the rest of society. And I think there's a lot of value behind those feelings, and it's a quite pitiful state that a lot of young people are in nowadays. Now, it's quite interesting that a lot of young people have these feelings, and trust me, I would know as well, of course. And in fact, many young people relate to these feelings. And it's not necessarily that life is hard, right? I mean, modern life is very comfortable on a material level. But what I think it more so is that people are alienated, right? They're detached on a spiritual and mental level from their day-to-day lives. And there's no feelings of higher purpose or of grandeur or of a mission or of a meaning to life. And modern loneliness, modern alienation from day-to-day life is truly unique. And it shows up in multiple institutions and in multiple ways, not just in education, but also in things like work, in relationships, in friendships. And it's interesting to know how many young people have these feelings. And it's interesting because some people have said this to me as well, like I remember I had a discussion with one of my subscribers a few months back, actually about a year ago, in fact, now considering, God, my channel has been it's been a year really since I've been working on this channel. That's interesting. But anyways, um, yeah, I was having this conversation with my subscriber, and he mentioned this to me that I have this sad look in my eyes, right? When I talk about things, that I have this like sad look. And that was very insightful. And it was like, damn, bro's looking into my soul, bro. Bro's like peering into my mind through my eyes or whatever. And that's an interesting thing, and I've even heard people say to me, for example, one of my friends from university, they said to me that, bro, why do you have this sad look, bro? You look like you're on a downer, bro. Like, things like that. I get sometimes people say this to me. And, look, it's not that like my life is uncomfortable. I have a very privileged life, of course, I have a very comfortable life living in the West in one of the most affluent periods of the West's history, and I mean the sacrifices my parents and their parents made in order to ensure that I could live a comfortable life in the UK. I'm not ungrateful for that at all. It's not that, I wouldn't want to be here. I don't want to exist in this time. But it's just that, there's these deep feelings of alienation and somewhat also of resentment towards society and of loneliness and all of these other things. And it's not that, like I said, I'm not ungrateful for all of these comforts I have. It's just that on a day-to-day level, the activities that I engage with, I have this feeling of alienation that, I'm not connected to these activities. I'm not present. And, things just seem to go by and I'm just here wondering what I'm even doing. And, it's difficult to find your purpose or build something meaningful in a modern lifestyle, because of course there's so many things that you have to do on a day-to-day basis that can bar you from pursuing what you want to pursue, from seeking these higher purposes, these higher meanings, right, these higher aims and these goals of grandeur and whatever else it may be. And like, for example, I've worked quite a lot on this channel for the past year or so. I've been uploading videos quite a lot. I've written quite a lot of articles. I've written a few books even. I haven't published them, but I've uploaded them anyways on the internet for people to read. But, sometimes I can't help but feel that, I haven't quite reached the level that I want to. I think that's a very natural feeling that a lot of people have. And, even though I've worked quite a lot on these kinds of academic projects that I've had, these kinds of intellectual projects, and I've written a lot of things and I've produced some things as well, it feels that people aren't paying attention to it, or, I'm not getting the praise perhaps that I want. And I know that seems very naive and very petty, but I think these are very much just proxies for seeking that authentic connection. It's proxies for seeking that kind of authentic connection to others, that authentic appreciation for your work, and that engaging with people based on a common passion, on a common purpose. In this case, of course, the natural human curiosity and desire to learn about things. And I think a lot of young people that I've seen, who are quite upset with the way their lives are, or they feel quite alienated or feel that they haven't achieved as much as they could. I think it's those very same feelings, like I said, of alienation and of just not feeling that they've done the things they should have done, or they haven't received the recognition for those things. And of course, that may seem all quite petty and whatever, but I think inevitably being young is going through those experiences of insecurity. I've mentioned this in past videos that growing up is one of the most difficult things a person can go through. And when I say that, it's not on a material level, it's not on a level of, oh, you have bills to pay or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. Of course, growing up, your parents are taking care of you. Well, hopefully so, hopefully, obviously if you're in a situation where maybe you don't have guardians to take care of you, that's different. I'm not talking about that. But of course, for many young people, we don't have these material worries or whatever. But what I do think there is that insecurity, about one's place in the world, and there is that insecurity about trying to figure out what you want to do. And at times there is that barrier where you feel like there's something you want to do, there's some things you want to chase, there's things you want to pursue, or things you want to do which are meaningful, which give you purpose, which allow you to feel that sense of being, of that sense of self-realization and actualization. But then there's all these barriers, right? These institutions, your day-to-day life, your commitments, your responsibilities that don't let you do that. And then that obviously combined with the feelings of alienation and loneliness and disattachment or de-enchantment or all these things in modernity, they don't allow you to do that. They don't allow you to fully engage in those things. So I think that is a difficult thing. Now, I don't have all the answers to this, obviously, but I think people need that sense of meaning, and with the collapse of the grand meta-narratives and the loss of trust and certainty, I think we need to cut the rope and fall headfirst into the abyss, and then seek to reconstruct something anew from the ashes of the old world. I've talked in past videos about reconstruction, that from the embers, the ashes of the old world, shall the fire of a new age arise, and the phoenix shall be reborn, shall be resurrected from those ashes. And I think it's about, engaging with that insecurity, but also learning to be with your flaws, learning to be with that sense of, you're not a perfect being, but you should still pursue what is meaningful in life. And obviously do what you have to do to survive. Don't be an idiot. Complete your commitments, complete your responsibilities. But whenever you have the time and as much energy and passion as you have, commit to those things that make your life meaningful, whether it be writing or reading or academics, whether it be pursuing athletics or sports or whatever else it may be. But yeah, I mean, those feelings of loneliness and alienation can be very real. But, I think many of the great people of history were, they had periods of time where they were in solitude, or they retreated from the rest of the society. And so, forging your path, let's say, forging something meaningful, something purposeful, begins with that solitude. It begins with being separated from the society and being in your thoughts. And it is through that genuine creativity and genuine passion can prosper and manifest itself. And like I said, from the fire of the old world, where the old world is being burnt down, those meta-narratives are being destroyed, shall the phoenix of the new age arise.